Some men call it progress. Down with those who doubt. To join the causes others join and shout when others shout. Come, you're a man, no passive stone. Stand up and call your soul your own. Go on alone, go on alone. Banish weakness, go on alone. Go on alone, go on alone. Don't look back, just go on alone. Some men lack the daring ever to be free. They shun the heights and crowd the depths and court security. Come, you're a man, no passive stone. Stand up and call your soul your own. Go on alone, go on alone. Banish weakness, go on alone. Go on alone, go on alone. Don't look back, just go on alone. Cowards see but pride in singularity. Oh, never mind if men are wrong, so long as they agree. Come, you're a man, no passive stone. Stand up and call your soul your own. Go on alone, go on alone. Banish weakness, go on alone. Go on alone, go on alone. Don't look back, just go on alone. Claim the power within you, error to defy. The world may change or disappear, but truth can never die. Come, you're a man, no passive stone. Stand up and call your soul your own. Go on alone, go on alone. Banish weakness, go on alone. Go on alone, go on alone. Don't look back, just go on alone.
The voice of God calls us to awaken him. How will he find us when he comes?
Awake and ready.
And when he asks us to dedicate ourselves ever more perfectly to him, how will he find us?
Awake and ready.
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
Heavenly Father,
Heavenly Father,
friend, beloved God,
friend, beloved God,
great masters,
great masters,
Jesus Christ,
Jesus Christ,
Babaji Krishna,
Babaji Krishna,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Lahiri Mahashaya,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
Swami Shri Yukteswar,
beloved Guru,
beloved Guru,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
Paramahansa Yogananda,
saints of all religions,
saints of all religions,
we humbly bow to you all.
we humbly bow to you all.
Divine Mother,
Divine Mother,
give us strength
give us strength
and courage
and courage
to battle against
to battle against
all ego limitations,
all ego limitations,
all feelings of separateness,
all feelings of separateness,
everything that keeps us
everything that keeps us
bound by delusion.
bound by delusion.
Give us yourself, Mother,
Give us yourself, Mother,
that we may give thee to all.
that we may give thee to all.
Om.
Om.
Peace.
Peace.
Amen.
Amen.
Please have a seat. And we'll sing.
Home is a green hill, home is a wind, blowing betrayal far, far away. Home is the knowledge heaven is near. Home's the end of the fray. Home is my heart's land, home
continue to meditate as I read to you from affirmations for self-healing on our quality this week. Positive thinking. As we think, so we become. And as we think, so our lives and circumstances become also. From the divine consciousness come answers to all our questions and solutions to all our problems. It is in lower consciousness that confusion reigns. Think positively in everything you do, for in that way you help to attune yourself to the divine flow. One who is inwardly in tune with grace finds all things harmonious and beneficial being attracted to him. Positive thinking combined with the sense of divine attunement is never presumptuous, for it draws its power not from the ego, but from the consciousness of God's joy within. Let's affirm together first in a strong voice, and then we'll do it softer until finally silently. My outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts.
My outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts.
Filled with the joy of God.
Filled with the joy of God.
I express His joy and harmony in everything I do.
I express His joy and harmony in everything I do.
My outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts.
My outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts.
Filled with the joy of God.
Filled with the joy of God.
I express His joy and harmony in everything I do.
I express His joy and harmony in everything I do.
In a whisper now, my outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts. Filled with the joy of God. I express His joy and harmony in everything I do. Now mentally, my outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts. Filled with the joy of God. I express His joy and harmony in everything I do. One more time, silently from the superconscious center. My outer life is a reflection of my inner thoughts. Filled with the joy of God. I express His joy and harmony in everything I do. Problems cannot exist, Lord, whenever Thou art near. Give me strength always to hold Thee in my heart. Om. Peace.
Peace.
Good morning, friends.
Good morning.
Great to see you. My name is Narayan. This is my wife, Dharmadevi. I think we know everyone, but welcome to our friends joining online as well. Every week we read from Rays of the One Light. These are parallel passages from the Bible and the Gita. And this week is Victory Demands the Courage of Conviction. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Jesus Christ said in the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 10, "Think not that I am come to send peace on earth. I came not to send peace, but a sword. For I am come to set a man at variance against his father, and the daughter against her mother, and the daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. And a man's foes shall be they of his own household. He that loveth father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. And he that loveth son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And he that taketh not his cross and followeth after me is not worthy of me. He that findeth, that is to say, that clingeth to his life, shall lose it. And he that loseth, in other words, that giveth up his life for my sake, shall find it. God tests the firmness of our faith. The sword described here is the sword of discrimination. The struggle Jesus describes is not a war against unknown enemies, but the struggle with our own attachment to all that is nearest and dearest to us, humanly speaking. Ultimately, it is a war against the ego itself and against anything with which we surround ourselves to bolster the ego's fragile sense of security. When Yogananda as a boy fled to the Himalayas to embrace a life of solitary meditation, he was apprehended by his older brother Ananda and brought home again. At a certain point, before he would accept defeat, he whispered to his friend Amar, his companion on the flight, "Let us slip away when opportunity offers. We can go on foot to Rishikesh." But Amar, whose brother had accompanied Ananda, had turned pessimist, disclaiming any intention of continuing their adventure. Yogananda's memorable comment on Amar's refusal was, he was enjoying the familial warmth. The spiritual warrior rejects that familial warmth. Rather, he claims the whole universe as his home. As the Bhagavad Gita puts it in the 14th chapter, unaffected by outward joys and sorrows or by praise and blame, secure in his divine nature, regarding with equal gaze a clod of mud, a stone, and a bar of gold, impartial toward all experiences, whether pleasant or unpleasant, firm-minded, untouched by either praise or blame, treating everyone alike, whether friend or foe, free from the delusion that in anything he does, he is the doer. Such a one has transcended nature's triune qualities. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind.
Morning again.
Morning.
I'd like to read to you from Whispers from Eternity, Yogananda's prayer demands. And this is, teach me to conquer discord by holding close my own harmony. I care not if the shell fire of trials scream around me, and I pay little heed to salvo shots fired in my honor. I mind not if machine guns of mischief are aimed at me to riddle me, for when thou art with me, I am safe behind the ramparts of thy protective light. Without thee, however, I would never be safe, even in the most impregnable fortress, constructed by the best skills modern science can supply. I try never to rouse the wrath of others whose tempers are fiery. No matter how they respond, however, I know that when I relax inwardly in thee, no one's anger with me can ever touch me. Bless me, that I may heal the shrapnel wounds of disharmony in the lives of others. Teach me to drive out darkness from their minds, and to prepare them for thy triumphal coronation in their hearts, O King of Light. Bless me, that I may bring a salve of sweet smiles to all melancholy souls, soothing showers to revive dry, arid minds, centuries of light to banish from their consciousness all the thieves of gloom, nectar of peace to all sorrow-parched hearts, and the glow of kindness to dispel dark cruelty everywhere. Teach me to subdue discord by calm waves of my own harmony. Teach me to conquer insincerity with sincerity. Bless me, that I may overcome any habit of idle criticism of others by turning censure against myself instead. and teach me finally to give the nectar opiate of thy peace to all tormented minds, that they may find rest in thee. Sometimes you read a whisper and you just think, let's just end it there. It's the best. Nothing I can say could possibly do anything else justice. But I wanted to tell a story. I wanted to focus on this aspect of victory demands the courage of our conviction, the conviction to follow our inner guidance, our intuition. And I wrote a blog on it, which I send out to a little group of friends that are very excellent proofreaders. And so last night I sent it out, and I should have put spoiler alert, Sunday service talk. But I don't know that anybody read it that's here, so hopefully not. But this story, it happened a few weeks ago, actually, but it starts back in August around Spiritual Renewal Week at Ananda Village. I was sitting around, Narayan and I were sitting around with a couple friends, and we were exploring, as I do with this group of friends, ways to bring in money for Ananda LA, some fundraising ideas. So, ideas were bouncing around, and this friend, who is a dear friend and extremely generous, she said, well, this house that we're in, we were staying at her house up at Ananda Village, and this house has, for the past 10 years, just kind of sat empty. It's had people come and seclude, and friends of the caretakers come and stay there for family reunions and such. But mostly it's just been empty. We would come there once a year or twice a year, and with our coming would come a larger group of people, friends and family of this woman who owns the house. And the house would get like a little shot of good energy, and also a big shot of additional clutter that would then stay in the house after we left. There was no one that was like, ooh, that's bad now, we don't need that, it's 10 years old, it's some old Tylenol in the closet that's like, would kill somebody. So it is a beautiful house, but it had a lot of care that had been lacking for a long time. So we're talking, and she says, well, why don't you put my house up on Airbnb, rent it out, and use that income for Ananda LA? It's like, okay, sounds great. And she's like, well, there's got to be someone that's going to manage it and come and clean it out and get it ready and set some ground rules and stuff. I'm like, I have a little experience with Airbnb, so hand went up. I can do it. And so Narayan is very good about setting, what do you call them? Not time limits so much. Deadlines, yeah. So he's like, well, when are we going to put it up on Airbnb? I'm like, well, when we get to it. And he's like, no. What's the date that we start offering it through Airbnb? So I just said, this was middle of October by this point. Middle of August. And I said, well, how about the 1st of October? And it was a little ambitious, I could tell in the moment, and from sort of the gasps of, really? Oh, yeah. But I was like, no, we can do this. That's over a month away, so like a month and a half to clean out this beautiful house and get it ready. Well, there can't be all that much to do here. And so the date was set. We got back to LA. I put it all up on Airbnb. No pictures because it wasn't ready yet for photographs. So I actually took a little picture from the street view of Google Maps, which looked awful. It was just this blurry mess with a couple of trees or something and dead grass. And it was, well, it's a placeholder. So I put it up, wrote the description and everything. Meanwhile, we're getting ready to move, which we recently moved to Santa Monica. So a lot of things were happening at the same time. But as we were away, it's an 8-hour drive, for those who don't know, to Ananda Village, to this house. So it's not like we could just take a weekend and drive up and drive back, or take a day and drive up and drive back. So we contacted our friends at Ananda Village, we knew the carpets in the bedrooms needed to be ripped out and redone, and some painting needed to happen, some things around the property. So we made calls, we got things in motion, it was all happening, but there was something in my mind that was like a little red flag. And what I knew about our property in the desert in 29 Palms is you have to have a great housekeeper. It has to be someone who just wraps their aura around the house, because you're not there to take care of it. So in the back of my mind, I'm like, all of this is really easy and fun, but who's that housekeeper gonna be? And so I kept just, I'm like, I'm gonna look, I'm gonna really do a serious search today. It would keep getting put off, and by the time the end of September was rolling around, where I knew we had to go and just clear out the house, I was expecting everything's gonna be done, and it's just a clean out of the house at that point. I still didn't have the housekeeper. So I was like, okay, Divine Mother's gonna work this out. So we go up towards the end of September, and at this point, mind you, someone, God bless their soul, seeing that little fuzzy image, had booked the house for the beginning of October. So I was like, it's no longer just a deadline in my mind, it's happening. So we go up, we have like 3 solid days cut out to just work on the house. We go in, and start opening doors. You have a different eye when you're realizing you're cleaning out this whole 6-bedroom house, 3 stories. And suddenly it was like, oh my God, there's so much garbage, there's so much stuff. It was like things that just didn't work. There was I have to tell this story, it's a little bit of a digression, but in the utility room there was just things just piled up from years. And there's this vacuum, and there's another vacuum, and another vacuum. But one of the vacuums has a little sticky note on it that says, "This vacuum shoots out dirt." Why is it here? And Narayan, who's like the forever optimist, said, well, maybe somebody thought that someone else could fix it. And I'm like, throw the darn thing away. So anyways, we had a lot of trash to be hauled away. A lot of things that were nice enough that could be given away. We got all new dishes, got new sheets, new bedding, new hot tub. We got all sorts of things to make this house beautiful. And the first day, it's just all piled up in the middle of the living room. So it was a little bit of panic in me at this point, as I realized we had such a short time to get it all done. But I could not shake this feeling about the housekeeper. I'm like, we can work hard, we can get it done, but this little nagging thought of the housekeeper was like, oh God, how am I going to find this person? It's got to be the perfect person. And so, anyways, we close out for the night. We got there really late, like 1 in the morning or something. Go to sleep. That next morning, I woke up, meditated, and I had this inspiration pop in my mind. You're going to find your cleaner at the Mother Truckers Community Board. Now I have to explain, Mother Truckers is a little health food store right down the road from the house. Really sweet, kind of homegrown granola place, but it's great. And they have this gigantic community board, little bulletin board that people post all sorts of stuff, right? So I get this inspiration, I'm like, wow, that's awesome. But then there was this part in me that was like, well, how will I know what how will I find this piece of paper with our housekeeper on it? So I start like getting into my mind, right? And I'm like, let's go to the Mother Truckers Community Board. And, or like, in my mind, I'm astral traveling to Mother Truckers. And I'm like, what does it look like, Divine Mother? What's the piece of paper? And so I imagine in my mind this bright yellow piece of paper with those little cutout slips that you can rip off and take home with you, right? I'm like, sounds good, I got it. So after meditation, I tell Narayan, I'm like, I think we're gonna find our house cleaner at Mother Truckers. And he's like, all right, well, let's go. So we go over. The first thing, I'm just looking at the board for this bright yellow piece of paper that I had so clearly in my mind. There is not one yellow piece of paper amongst hundreds of pieces of paper. I'm not lying. It's just like a collage of all colors, but no yellow on the whole board. So I'm like, oh, that's weird. What happened there? And so Narayan's looking. He's like, well, here's a house cleaner. And we both look, and I have to say, I didn't put this in the blog, but there's a picture of the man, and I was a little bit like, oh God, it's a man? It's a man that's going to clean my house. But mind you, our cleaner at the desert retreat is a man, and he does a fantastic job. So it's like, okay, don't be sexist here. Sexism goes both ways. So trying to keep an open mind, but I'm like, it's just this little plain yellow piece of, or white piece of paper. It's not yellow, it doesn't have little tear off slips, nothing. This is not my piece of paper. And so we look and look and look, and there's like everything you could imagine under the sun on this bulletin board, like the drumming circles, the Ayurvedic healer, the energy healer, the 12,000 healers, and one cleaner amongst all of them. So I'm like, oh man, what went wrong here? What's wrong with my intuition? I like felt it so clearly. So now it's like, well, let's just take a picture of the cleaner, just in case. So takes a picture. We go home. I'm a little bit distraught here. Like, I thought for sure it was gonna be there. And so I just instantly, we get home, I'm like, I can't think about the cleaner anymore. I just have to start doing stuff. So I just start doing. And Narayan's like, well, I'm gonna look. Let me just search online. I'm like, you're not gonna find anything online. Forever optimist. I won't say I'm a forever pessimist, but maybe sometimes a little bit too much of a realist. So Narayan starts looking on Yelp, and he says, well, here, he reads a couple. He's like, this one doesn't have great reviews. I'm like, no. He reads a few of the reviews, and it's like, oh, no, definitely not, because people have these terrible experiences. This cleaner, that cleaner. He gets to like the third cleaner, and he's like, wow, this one's got some really good reviews. He starts reading the reviews. I'm like, that is our person. I mean, there were like the glowing reviews, handled everything, even checked for this and that. I was like, that's exactly what we need. And so he's looking, and he starts to punch in the number into the phone. He's like, wait a minute. And he looks at the phone, and it's the same number as the flyer from Mother Truckers. And so I'm like, huh, that's really interesting. Well, the story doesn't end there, and sorry, it's a long story, but there is a good point to it. The man comes, we have him over, want to show him the house, see if it's a good fit, and he looks at Narayan's shirt, which is one we got from the Yoga Fest in Portland, and it has a quote of Yogananda on it, and he says, oh, you know Yogananda? And we're like, you do? And he was like, yeah, I just moved here 5 months ago from Southern California. He lived in Orange County. He took all of the SRF lessons and became a Kriya Bond through Self-Realization Fellowship. He said, my Kriya practice fell off, but I practiced, he called it Yogananda's meditation every single day, morning and night, without fail. And he said, I've been trying to connect with someone to help me get back into my Kriya practice. And we're like, you don't know that you live, I mean, because he lived 15 minutes from our house there. I'm like, you live 15 minutes from the largest spiritual community based on Yogananda's teachings. And he's like, really? Divine Mother! What a blessing. Just something we can't possibly make this stuff up. You know, here's this man, not only is he a professional cleaner, he's been cleaning for 18 years. He asked all the right questions. He's like, how do you want the beds left? How, you know, I'm going to get all the cobwebs, you know, and he was just, I'm going to do a deep clean first. It really needs a deep clean. I'm like, yes, it needs a deep clean. But then here's this soul that's been putting out a soul call because he wants to revive his Kriya practice.
Wow.
I mean, it was just so touching to me. And at the same time, very humbling, because here I was ready to dismiss this little white piece of paper because it wasn't what I imagined. And so it really got me thinking about intuition versus imagination. Because what happened was the intuition came. There was the openness. I wanted a message. I wanted the guidance. But then I wanted to get too involved. My little self wanted to get involved and figure out more, wanted more details. Well, God's like, just go to the Mother Truckers Community Board. It's going to be really obvious once you get there. But my mind was not happy with that. It wanted more details. So the imagination kicked in, almost to the point of kicking out the intuition altogether. Amazing. So I wanted to tell one more story that Swami Kriyananda shared, because this got me reflecting on intuition, and I started researching on Intuition for Starters, a book that Swami Kriyananda wrote. And he shares in there a story of St. Francis. And some of you may wonder, why do we always talk about St. Francis? Well, one, he was a great saint, and also Yogananda called him his patron saint. So there's a very real connection even between our line of gurus and St. Francis. So St. Francis was praying one day in the, I have to see the name of it, San Damiano? Yes, San Damiano. And he was this little crumbled down church outside of Assisi. And he was kneeling there praying to God, to Jesus. And Jesus came to life. And he said to him, Francis, rebuild my church, which you can see is in ruin. And he's looking around him going, yeah, it's really in ruin. Just fallen apart little chapel, tiny little chapel. And so what did his intuition, what did his mind tell him from that clear divine guidance? It was, pick up some stones and start building the church, because that's what Jesus wants me to do. And so he did. He started rebuilding this little chapel, and he went into the city of Assisi, and he started gathering stones from people to rebuild this church. And the young men started to notice this young man working to rebuild this tiny little chapel that was in ruins. Some of them made fun of him. He didn't stop. Some of them said, I gotta follow that guy. There's something about him. There's something that I need to follow. And so they followed him, and they all started rebuilding this little chapel. But why he's telling this story is that St. Francis, through an incorrect understanding of this divine experience, wasn't an incorrect interpretation, but it was a superficial one, because Christ wanted him to rebuild the entire church. It needed a change from within. But through his simple, humble devotion and willingness to act, the courage to act, even though he knew he would be persecuted, he would be mocked and ridiculed, he would be forsaken by his family, he still followed that guidance. He followed and he acted with courage. And he did rebuild the church at that time. A huge reformation happened from this small group of disciples and from this one man who had the courage to follow his convictions. In that chapter, right after this story, I want to close with this that Swamiji says. Sorry, I pulled the piece of paper out that was marking the page. This is on the chapter of the section of Be Willing to Act. And Swamiji closes that section with, don't wait for some sort of pronouncement or expect a vision or voice from the clouds, but have the courage to act. By not acting, we often close the door to real guidance, whereas in the process of acting, the energy begins to flow more clearly. And don't worry too much about making mistakes. If you have a courageous attitude, you'll find that even if you haven't taken the best course of action at first, over time, your guidance will be clarified. Eventually, you may realize that though you totally went off in the wrong direction, things have somehow turned out much better than if you'd started off right in the first place.